The death toll from the strongest earthquake to hit the region in a century continues to climb in Turkey and Syria, surpassing 5,000. And authorities expect that number to rise as they search through thousands of collapsed buildings, hoping to find survivors. Winter weather is hampering rescue efforts, leaving survivors to sleep on the streets in the cold, rain, and snow. The Turkish government has closed schools for a week, and the president has declared 7 days of national mourning. Witnesses in northwest Syria described the scene as terrifying. The UN estimates more than 4 million people in that part of the country were already dependent on humanitarian aid after nearly 12 years of civil war. Still, rescue workers push ahead, pulling survivors from the rubble. Salma Abdelaziz has more from Istanbul.
Search and rescue operations here in Turkey now picking up pace. They continued into the overnight hours, but of course, as the sun rose, giving that light, rescue efforts picking up that pace overnight. Rescue workers from many other countries that had promised help, promised aid to Turkey began to fly into that area. They've arrived with aid and specialized equipment to try to find any survivors buried under the rubble. Important here to remember that the earthquake struck just after 4 a.m. local time, meaning people were sleeping in their homes. Fears that many families were simply buried alive under the rubble of their homes. And that's the fear that many families across Turkey have here today. Many searching for their missing loved ones, desperate to find any information on them, calling authorities with a home address. But these search efforts are being hampered by the weather. Major storms have been hitting the region, making it difficult for planes to take off, for roads to be open and clear, and of course compounding the misery of those made homeless by this earthquake, some having to spend the night outside without shelter in freezing cold temperatures. And absolutely, these hours are critical. It's this 24 to 48 hour period after the earthquake that rescue efforts still hope to find people alive under the rubble. Now, south of Turkey to Syria, perhaps the situation there even more dire. It's difficult to imagine a more vulnerable population being struck by yet another catastrophe than the Syrian people, who have endured more than a decade of war that has left northwestern Syria, the area affected by this earthquake, with much of its critical infrastructure damaged. Hospitals, clinics, schools, these were places targeted during this civil conflict, and absolutely that means there is very limited resources on the ground. You also have some 4 million Syrian displaced people living in that area. They were already dependent on humanitarian aid before this earthquake. Now that situation even more dire.